Hello everyone, my name is Lindsay, and in this video I'm going to show you how to apply the interpolated slider and the interpolated grid master controllers to a more complex character like this 360-degree rig named Leif. Just like the basketball, the interpolation slider master controller is a real quick and easy tool to use even for a 360-degree rig. We just have more frames and more poses to add. With keeping my playhead on the first frame from the rotation, I can click the slider wizard. My first frame's already set. I can set my last frame to 313. I know I'm going to want my horizontal layout. And I can give my master controller a name for body rotation and hit create. And at this point, if you haven't already done so, it's a good time to check and see which composite you want to attach your master controller to. But in this case, I know I'm going to want to attach it to the Leif master composite. And hit OK. Let the wizard do its thing. Save the script. And now we can use the master controller view to refresh and load our scripts and locate our master controller node so we can start testing it and see how we like it. Leif rotates perfectly. He's got his flip in the middle. We knew that would happen based on our experience with the basketball and based on the build because I did flip him from his top master peg. Now I can customize my widget just a little bit more by opening the layer properties, making it a little bit bigger, changing the color so that it kind of matches the skin tone. And now if I don't see the effects right away, just remember that you have to hide the controls and show them again for them to appear. And the last step is placing the slider master controller where we want it. So quickly adding a peg using the shortcuts Command-P on a Mac or Control-P on a PC, we can turn our animate button off, move the slider to the bottom of the feet, and then turn the animate button back on. Now because I want to preserve my poses, I'm going to move my playhead to a keyframe where I don't have any of my poses and give Leif a little spin. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you what happens when you connect your master controller to your top peg that you've used to flip your character. You're actually going to run into a problem here, so I am going to show you how to fix it. And that's it for our interpolation slider master controller. And now we can go ahead and start our interpolated grid master controller. As you can see from frames 200 to 223, this is where we have all of our head tilt poses that we're going to use for our grid master controller. And I've also brought in my pre-made grid so that that'll help me envision where my head poses are going to go in coordination with the actual grid of the master controller. And if we bring in our grid node, we'll be able to compare them side by side and get the actual X and Y values that we'll need for our head rotation and poses. So as you can see, the main coordinates for our X values lies along 0, 4, and 8, while our Y values go by increments of 3s. So we'll align each one of these head tilt rotation poses to each one of these intersecting grid points. And from here, we can go in and select our head group for our character Leif. And if you remember from our previous videos, we need to know which composite we're going to attach our master controller to. So we can double check. We're going to want to attach it to the Leif head comp. And now we can get started by clicking our interpolated grid master controller wizard button. And now we get to start customizing our grid parameters. So we know we're going to need an 8x3 grid, and we can actually, instead of keeping our grid to the center, we can actually bump it up by 4 so that the bottom of our grid actually starts at 0. And to try to obtain that square shape in our grid cells, we'll change this to an X values of 3 and Y value of 4. And this way, it'll be a little bit less work for us to maintain when we go to adjust the grid positions after we assign the values from each key pose. I already know that the pattern for my character, the way that my keyframes are, the top row will be all of Leif's upwards looking positions, the bottom row will be all of his downward looking positions, and in the middle it's just going to be his normal head poses. So it's going to go up, normal, down, and so on. Hang on while I run through these keys, and when I get to the flip, we're going to have to make a slight change in the pattern. So hang on tight. So here we are at the flip, where it's actually going to reverse the pattern. So it's going to go down, normal, up, and that's because when I flip my character, I kind of cheated and I pasted my keys in reverse. That's something that I'm preparing you for, and I've already prepared for myself. So as we get closer to assigning the rest of our key poses, we're going to have to think about restructuring our grid so that we limit our flip zone. Right now we have about 3 grid spaces wide, and that's too much. So we're going to need to change the position of our grid points. And it's nice to have the pre-drawn grid for this part. And then that way you're not guessing your numbers, because we're going to be changing this structure quite a bit actually. And as we've done with our basketball, we're going to change this row to -0.1, and then we'll change the other row to 0.1. The reason why we don't go any closer at 0.1 of a distance is because if you want to come back in here and you have these 2 points overlapping, it becomes a little bit of a hassle to try to re-click them and reshape them. So it's really just about making that part easier. But from here, we can just continue on and reshape our grid, and using our pre-drawn grid as a guide, make all the adjustments that we need to make everything fit. So hold on while I finish these up. It's going to take a minute or two. And now that we've finally reached the end of setting all our grid positions, setting all our keys, we can name our Grid Master controller, head rotate, hit create. Don't forget, you need to know which composite you're going to attach this to, and we'll be using the Leif head comp. Hit OK. We're going to save our script. And before we close this window, we're going to give it a little test drive. Here we can see where our flip is happening. And I actually forgot to do this, but when you go to test your master controller, you're going to want to remember to not use one of the frames that your poses are on, because this will change those values for your animation, and you don't want to mess with those poses. So I'm just going to hit undo. So because we've put so much work into the head rotation, interpolated grid master controller, let's save our work. We can create a custom grid preset, and we can label this Leif head rotate. And when we hit OK, we can close our window, and we'll be able to actually go back and update our master controller if we want to in the future. So now we can disable our grids and move our playhead to a free frame when we're not interfering with the rest of our poses, especially from our 360-degree body rotation. And now as I play with my interpolated slider to rotate the body, I am noticing that I'm having a difficult time getting it to go to the opposite end of the slider. So to quickly troubleshoot this, as I said at the end of making my interpolation slider master controller, I did connect it to the Leif's master peg, which means it is being flipped, which actually won't let me touch the opposite end of the controller. But let's use our master controller view to find and locate our body rotation master controller. And the easiest solution for this small problem is to simply detach your master controller from the blipped peg. And now we're not having any problems with our master controllers. And we're able to get a wide range of angles and poses with the body rotation and the head rotation. And this is a great way to set up your first master controller so that you can start the setup of any scene.